everyone, my name is Taylor Lumpkin. I'm joined by Sean Gallagher, who is the founder and director of the Performing Arts Physical Therapy here in New York. Sean has worked with major dance companies and Broadway shows, such as The Lion King, Matilda, and Rock of Ages. So Sean, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Now, my first question is, can you just tell me a little bit about your practice and how you became focused on the performing arts?
Well, I originally have a degree in dance. I got a degree in dance and physical therapy at the same time. I went into physical therapy to work with dancers. So, because there was no dance medicine, there was no place like this to come to when I was dancing. So that was the main impetus of wanting to do this, is to be able to take care of performers because it wasn't being done.
And do dancers and Broadway performers come to you only after sustaining an injury, or do they also come to learn how to prevent and avoid injuries?
Well, like most people, you don't go, oh, I think I'm going to get injured, let me go see the therapist. You usually come after the fact. But one of the things that I do is I contract with Broadway shows, and we're there before the show doing preventative care, so that when people come in, and we try to keep the little things little so that hopefully they don't have to come in with an injury.
Okay. And what common injuries do you see in these performers, and how are they typically treated?
Well, there's not really a common injury because, I mean, in a day I can see a neck, a back, a knee, an ankle, a shoulder. So there's no real common thing per se. For dancers, most of the injuries are from the hips down. But on Broadway, because of partnering and costuming and headpieces and shoe wear and other things, there's lots of different variables. So there's no set injury that happens all the time.
Okay. And now I also saw on your website that you're offering the vocal wellness program. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, I was a dancer, so I was working with dancers, but when you get to Broadway, there are dancers and there are actors and there are singers. Mm-hmm. And the singers would come in and have issues with their voice. And in the beginning, I didn't know how to deal with that, so I started to study the anatomy. I did a few dissections and started to develop techniques and manual techniques that I wanted to practice. And I would practice and figure things out. I've had some training in osteopathy and traditional osteopathy, looking at the TMJ and other aspects of the vocal mechanisms. So I was able to come up with a program that I've developed that helps singers manage their problems if it's not a vocal cord issue. Okay. So I usually tell them, if you go to your ENT and they tell you your vocal cords are fine and you're still having trouble, that's usually when I can help. Okay.
And now I also know that you and your clinicians work with major dance companies and Broadway shows. Can you tell me how that works? I know that, are you on site during the performances and shows? How does that work, and what do you do specifically?
Usually not during the show. There are some instances where we're there during the show. I just got the contract for the new Cirque du Soleil show that's coming to Broadway. And that I hired somebody full-time for that, and they will be there during the show because that show's a little different than most Broadway shows because accidents can happen. Mm-hmm. Most performance injuries are overuse injuries. They're not traumatic injuries per se. They tend to be more overuse. So what we do is we go to the theater and we're there for 2 hours before, hour or two before the call, which is usually half hour before the show. Mm-hmm. And they have a sign-up sheet, and they sign up, and they come and say, I'm having issues with this, I'm having issues with that. We take care of it. If it's something that's worse, which happens, and there's an injury, then I, suggest they go see the doctor, and then we'll come into the clinic, and we'll do a little bit more, physical therapy that's not maintenance or preventative, but more taking care of the injury.
So do you have any tips for performers, any ways that can help them prevent getting injured?
Well, for performers, especially on Broadway, but a lot of other things, it's repetitive. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And so I always talk about you need to prepare for what the show is going to do, and then undo what the show does for you. Because people don't come and pay to see normal. Mm-hmm. People pay to see abnormal things. So people are doing, dancers and performers are doing abnormal things to their body. And we are creatures of habit, and we habituate and adapt to our environment. So when you're doing something 8 times a week for a couple hours, your body starts to change, mm-hmm. and it becomes, the question becomes, when does the stress become distress? because life is stressful and that's normal. When it becomes distressful, it becomes a problem. So it's finding that balance and preparing for the show and undoing what it does. So, and that basically is warming up properly. And warming up is not stretching, it is exercise. You're the most flexible when you're warm, so the best way to get warm is to exercise, and then I teach them how to exercise based on what their particular track or show is and what their problems are. And then after the show, because the show is imbalancing, I teach them how to use, do self-massage with balls and rollers. I've been doing that for, foam rollers are now the big thing, and I've been doing that for 30 years. I started, I was one of the first guys to ever start using rollers, and we started using it because of performers. And so you use balls and rollers for self-massage and proper stretching and how to stretch and how long to stretch for, those types of things, so that they can manage and balance out and undo what the show does to them every day, so that it doesn't skew them over a period of time.
And now we couldn't end this interview without mentioning your ties to Philadelphia. Could you explain your connections with Philly and Temple University?
Well, I grew up in Philly.
Okay.
After high school, I moved to Montana and was there for 5 years, and I took a dance class and decided I wanted to be a dancer, but Montana was not the place to be a dancer. And one of my teachers in Montana had gone to Temple, and since I was from Philly, she said you should go to Temple, so I went to Temple. And Temple was great because it allowed me to, I guess in a sense, follow my dream, which was to be able to do dance and physical therapy, because they were in different schools. There was the Allied Health School, there was the Hyper D, and in Hyper D I was able to do athletic training, because I had was in an English class, and one of my classmates was telling me he was doing athletic training and he got a scholarship for that. And I was like, they get a scholarship to help work on people, learn how to take care of people. And so I went into the training room, and I had earrings and leg warmers, and they didn't really know how to deal with me that much, because most of it was football and basketball and that stuff. But I was able to become the trainer for the gymnastics team, which is as close as you could get to dance and sports. So I had to go through sports to learn how to take care of dancers. And it was a lot more trauma, as athletic training, because those sports have a lot more trauma. So it was good because, for dancers, there's not a lot of traumas, but when it does happen, I was well trained to deal with it as well. And then from there, I went into the physical therapy program. So I was able to meld all those together and come out with 2 degrees and had been a athletic trainer for the student trainer for 3 years.
Well, that's so wonderful, and thank you so much for sitting down with me today, and it was a pleasure meeting you.
Great, thanks for having me.